The first thing I noticed that morning was the quiet. Not the gentle, comforting kind of quiet, but the kind that presses down on your chest and makes every little sound feel amplified. It was too early, far too early for a Saturday, yet somehow I was already awake. The sun had just started peeking through the blinds, slanting warm streaks of light across my bedroom floor. I rubbed my eyes, still half dreaming, and glanced at the neatly folded pile of clothes on the chair across the room. My eyes lingered there longer than usual, and a familiar, nervous excitement bubbled in my chest. I'm Alex. Well, that's what most people know me as. By day, I'm just your average 24-year-old office worker, shuffling through reports, attending meetings, and trying desperately not to spill coffee on my shirt before 10 a.m. But by night, I live a very different life. A life I've only shared with one person in the world, Emma, my girlfriend. Emma doesn't just know about my secret crossdressing, she encourages it, teases me about it, and somehow manages to make it feel like an adventure rather than a shameful secret. Most people might call it unusual. Most people might call me crazy. But with her, it feels like freedom. Emma and I met 3 years ago at a coffee shop near my office. She has this effortless energy, the kind that makes everyone around her feel alive. I still remember the first time I saw her. Her laugh echoed across the cafe, bright and clear, and I swear I froze mid-step. She had a mischievous glint in her eyes, like she already knew every secret I was hiding. It wasn't long before we started dating, and somewhere along the way, I told her about my fascination with women's fashion, the way I longed to feel delicate silk against my skin, the thrill of high heels clicking against the floor. Most people would have laughed, walked away, or judged me. Emma? She smiled and said, "Then let's make it fun." The apartment we share is modest but cozy, tucked into a quiet street with a little courtyard that catches the morning sun perfectly. It's the kind of place that makes you feel safe, that makes hiding secrets feel almost manageable. My bedroom is a small sanctuary. On one side, there's my closet, half filled with my everyday clothes, half filled with the treasures Emma has helped me collect over the years. Delicate blouses, silky skirts, high heels that gleam under the lamp, and makeup neatly arranged on the dresser. Everything has a place, everything has a purpose, and everything holds a promise of escape from the monotony of my normal life. That morning, I was staring at her shoes. Not just any shoes, Emma's new pair of black stilettos, glossy and impossibly high, still carrying the faint scent of the boutique she bought them from. They weren't meant for me. They were hers. Yet somehow, as I reached for them, I felt that familiar rush of thrill mixed with terror. A tiny voice in my head whispered, "Don't. She'll know." But another, louder voice countered, "Just try them. Just this once." Emma had gone out to run errands, promising she'd be back by noon. That meant I had exactly 2 hours, maybe less, before she returned. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears as I slipped the shoes from the box. They were heavier than I expected, their sharp heels clicking against the floor as I balanced on them, teetering slightly at first. The sensation was intoxicating. My legs felt taller, my posture shifted, my chest lifted as if the shoes themselves demanded I carry myself differently. I glanced at the mirror, and that's when the unease began to creep in. I didn't just see myself. I saw a different version of me, a version I rarely let anyone witness. My shoulders softened, my face seemed more delicate, my hair fell differently around my face. The shoes had done more than elevate my height. They had unlocked a part of me I kept hidden even from Emma at times. I swallowed, feeling both exhilaration and panic, aware that every step I took deeper into this fantasy also brought me closer to a precarious edge. Sitting on the bed, I began to change. First the stockings, then a skirt Emma had picked for me last month, a soft pink thing that brushed against my thighs in the most vulnerable, thrilling way. My hands shook slightly as I applied makeup, just a touch at first, concealer and blush, enough to soften my features. I wasn't doing this for anyone but me, yet the thought of Emma seeing me like this sent a shiver down my spine. Part of me wanted to freeze time, to stay in this moment forever, and part of me wanted to flee before she could ever discover the depths of my obsession. I caught my reflection again and almost laughed aloud at the irony. I had been careful all these years, hiding this side of myself from the world, yet here I was, completely alone in Emma's apartment, transforming into something almost unrecognizable, but thrillingly me. The clock ticked on the wall, each second reminding me that freedom and disaster were separated by the faintest thread. And then I heard it, a soft creak from the living room. My heart jumped into my throat. Had Emma come back early? I froze, perched on the stilettos, fingers clutching the hem of my skirt. The apartment was supposed to be empty. I told myself it was nothing, maybe the wind, maybe the radiator settling. But deep down, I knew that feeling, the one that made your stomach twist and your pulse race. Something was about to change. Something that would blur the line between fantasy and reality, between desire and danger. I took a deep breath, balancing myself, and whispered under my breath, "Just a little longer. Just a little longer." My reflection stared back at me, smiling faintly, as if warning me and enticing me at the same time. I had no idea that in just a few hours, trying on Emma's shoes would become the first step in a chain of events that would trap me in a life I wasn't sure I could control or escape from. The moment Emma's stilettos clicked against the hardwood floor, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just the height or the unfamiliar balance. It was the subtle way my body began to respond to the clothes, the shoes, the reflection in the mirror. Each step toward the dresser felt electric, every movement amplified by the awareness that I was alone, yet not truly alone. Alone, yet completely exposed to the life I had hidden for so long. I examined my reflection again. My hair fell perfectly around my shoulders, a soft cascade framing my face. The skirt swayed lightly as I moved, teasing the contours of my legs. My chest felt lifted, my posture more confident. But with every inch I embraced this new persona, a shadow of fear loomed. What if Emma returned? What if she walked in and caught me in this vulnerable state? My heartbeat quickened. I told myself to focus. I reached for a blouse Emma had left draped over the chair, a delicate silk in pale lavender. Sliding it over my shoulders, I marveled at how it changed not just my appearance, but the very way I felt. I felt visible, powerful, terribly fragile at the same time. My hands shook as I buttoned it up, imagining Emma's teasing smile, the way she always seemed to know exactly what to say to push me further into this thrilling world I had kept secret. The makeup came next. I had practiced this countless times, but today it felt different. Each brushstroke was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Concealer to hide the slightest imperfection, blush to warm my cheeks, mascara to frame my wide eyes. I paused for a moment, staring at the reflection. Half Alex, half the girl I was becoming. The line between my identities blurred, and I realized I didn't want it to remain clear. Not yet. The shoes were the final touch. I lifted my foot into the heel and teetered, then the other. The click-clack echoed through the empty apartment. With each step, I felt the transformation deepen, not just in body, but in mind. I imagined Emma walking in, her eyes widening, that familiar smirk curling at the edges of her lips. Would she laugh? Approve? Or would she be shocked by how far I had allowed myself to go? I decided to explore. Quietly, I padded across the living room, my posture exaggerated, my balance precarious, but intoxicating. I couldn't help but admire how the shoes altered my presence. I moved differently, each step a careful negotiation between thrill and stability. I glanced at the couch and thought about sitting, but the fear of toppling over kept me standing. My pulse thrummed in my ears. Every small movement became monumental, charged with an unspoken tension. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Emma had left a few things out on the coffee table. Her phone, a half-empty cup of coffee, and a small box of chocolates she had promised to save for later. The box tempted me, but I knew that touching it would feel like trespassing, crossing a line I hadn't dared to before. I hesitated, hovering between temptation and restraint. And yet, I reached for it, letting my fingers brush against the smooth wrapper. The thrill of daring, of stepping into forbidden territory, sent a shiver down my spine. Then came the internal struggle. My mind raced. Part of me thrilled at this secret indulgence. Part of me panicked at the risk. What if she came home early? What if I was discovered in the middle of this transformation? I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the box like a lifeline. Every creak of the apartment, every faint sound outside the window, made me flinch. The anxiety was almost as intoxicating as the transformation itself. I decided to experiment further. I walked toward the hallway mirror, taking slow, deliberate steps. The shoes made me sway slightly, my body learning to adjust with each movement. I tilted my head, examining the angles of my face, the softness in my eyes, the delicate curve of my lips. I barely recognized myself, but I didn't want to. This version of me, delicate yet powerful, terrified yet exhilarated, felt more real than the Alex who shuffled through office life every day. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. I tried on a few accessories, a necklace, a bracelet, a scarf Emma had casually tossed onto the dresser last week. Each item added layers, not just to my appearance, but to my confidence. I felt like I was peeling back layers of a hidden self, revealing something I had long denied. My reflection in the mirror wasn't just a curiosity anymore, it was a revelation. But the suspense was building. Every creak in the apartment made my stomach tighten. The wind rattling the window pane, the faint hum of traffic outside, even the soft ticking of the clock, all became threats. I imagined Emma's sudden return, the moment her eyes would land on me in this transformed state. Would she laugh, tease, or scold me? Or worse, would she be horrified? The uncertainty gnawed at me, making my exhilaration sharper, almost painful. Then, I heard a subtle sound, the faintest tap against the window. I froze, mid-step, feeling the sharp click of the stilettos echo in my ears. My heart lurched. I tiptoed toward the window, peering cautiously. No one was there, just the empty courtyard, bathed in sunlight. I exhaled slowly, but the tension lingered, coiling in my chest like a live wire. I sank onto the edge of the bed, legs crossed awkwardly in the high heels, and ran my fingers through my hair. The internal battle raged, the thrill of being caught, the fear of being discovered, and the deep, undeniable pleasure of transformation. I realized then that this wasn't just about clothes or shoes. It was about power, vulnerability, and identity all tangled together in a dizzying mix. I glanced at the clock. Emma would be back in less than an hour. My pulse quickened again. Should I try to reverse the transformation? Or should I stay, reveling in this forbidden moment, risking discovery for the ultimate thrill? Every instinct screamed caution, but my desire whispered louder, stay. Experience it. Feel every second. And then, almost instinctively, I reached for a wig Emma had left on the dresser, a dark, silky cascade that would frame my face perfectly. I shook slightly as I placed it on my head, adjusting the fit. My reflection now stared back at me fully transformed. Alex, yes, but also someone entirely new. Someone daring, exposed, and impossibly alive in this stolen moment. A sudden noise from the living room made me spin around, the heels clicking sharply against the floor. My pulse soared. Footsteps? Or just imagination? Every nerve in my body was alert. I could no longer tell if the thrill or the fear was stronger. They were intertwined, inseparable. The suspense was no longer an abstract idea. It was tangible, crawling along my skin, pressing against my chest, demanding attention. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. One more glance at the mirror. One more step into this precarious, intoxicating world. I was ready, or as ready as I could ever be. Whatever happened next would change everything. I didn't know it yet, but trying on Emma's shoes had already set me on a path from which there was no easy return. The sound of the door unlocking sent a jolt through me that made my heels teeter precariously.
Emma.
She was back. My heart slammed in my chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the quiet apartment. I froze, perched on the stilettos, my reflection staring back at me from the mirror with wide, alarmed eyes. Part of me wanted to dash to the bedroom door, tear off the wig, the skirt, the blouse, and transform back into Alex before she could see me. But another, far louder part whispered, "Don't move. Let her see." I barely dared to breathe as her footsteps grew closer. Each tap on the floorboard sounded exaggerated in my ears. She didn't shout my name, didn't call out, just approached. I felt the icy claw of panic tightening around my chest. My fingers gripped the edge of the dresser, knuckles white, as I struggled to decide my next move. Emma's shadow fell across the doorway, and I could feel the tension snap through me. Her eyes widened, not with anger, not with confusion, but with that familiar spark of mischief. "Well, hello," she said softly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I see someone's been busy." My mouth opened, closed, opened again. Words failed me. My heart was a drumbeat in my throat, threatening to betray me with every second. She stepped fully into the room, her gaze sweeping over my transformed self. The stockings, the skirt, the blouse, the heels. I could feel the blush creeping across my cheeks. Vulnerable, exposed, and in a way alive. You tried my shoes," she said, half laughing, half teasing. My hands trembled. I started, but she held up a finger. "Sure, don't explain. Not yet." I swallowed hard, unsure whether relief or dread should dominate. Relief, because she didn't seem angry. Dread, because I had no idea what she was planning next. Emma circled me, heels clicking against the floor, examining me like a curious cat. I could feel every movement of hers, every shift in the room's energy, as if she was both a predator and a playful conspirator in this twisted dance. And then it happened. My balance wavered on the stilettos, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I would topple. Emma's hands shot out instinctively, steadying me. The closeness, the unexpected touch, sent a shiver down my spine. "Careful," she whispered. "You're not just playing dress-up, are you?" I shook my head, voice trembling. I just wanted to try them." Truth felt inadequate. It didn't capture the thrill, the fear, the aching desire that had driven me to this point. Emma's gaze softened, and yet there was a dangerous glint in her eyes, as if she knew the exact power she now held over me. Then came the unexpected obstacle, the phone. It buzzed loudly on the counter, snapping both of us out of the charged tension. I froze. Emma glanced at it. "Oh no," she muttered, picking it up. A video call from her sister. And in that moment, the stakes multiplied. "Stay right there," Emma said, her voice steady but urgent. I obeyed, unable to do anything but watch as she answered. The conversation was quick, hushed, and urgent. Her sister wanted to come by, unexpectedly, unannounced. My stomach twisted. If she saw me like this, Emma hung up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before she arrives," she said, biting her lip. "Do you trust me?" I nodded, heart hammering. The implication was clear. She wasn't just teasing me. She was dragging me further into this, deeper into a trap I didn't realize I had walked into willingly. "Good," she said, and suddenly, the room felt smaller, charged with an electric tension. "Then we're going to see how well you can handle it." The minutes became a blur. Emma guided me, adjusting my skirt, repositioning the wig, checking the heels. Every touch sent pulses of excitement and terror through me. My breathing grew shallow, each heartbeat threatening to betray me. The reflection in the mirror no longer felt like me. It was a stranger's body, but with my thoughts trapped inside. Vulnerable, exposed, and impossibly alive. Then came the knock. Not Emma's sister, someone else. I didn't recognize the rhythm, the tone, but it was enough to make me freeze. Emma went to the door, and I barely dared to breathe. The knock came again, more insistent. "I'll get it," she whispered, tension creeping into her voice. Before I could react, she opened the door, and there he was. Mark, a colleague from the office I hadn't expected to see outside work. My mind spun. He wasn't supposed to be here. I tried to shrink back, to become invisible in the heels, but there was no escape. My chest tightened, my pulse spiked, and I realized that every moment from now on would be a test of balance, composure, and secrecy. Mark stepped in casually, oblivious, or pretending to be, to the situation. "Hey, Emma," he said, smiling. Then he turned slightly, and his gaze locked on me. For a fraction of a second, the room froze. I felt his eyes, sharp and calculating, taking in every detail: the wig, the skirt, the heels. The reflection in the mirror caught his expression, a mix of surprise, curiosity, and disbelief. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to scream. But Emma's hand was on my back, grounding me, almost daring me to stay. "Alex," she whispered, though my name came out as a tremble on my lips. Time seemed to stretch impossibly. My legs wobbled, the heels threatening to betray me. Mark's eyebrows raised ever so slightly. And then a subtle smile, almost teasing, curled at the edge of his lips. I wasn't sure if it was amusement, approval, or judgment, but it felt like a test I couldn't fail. And then came the symbolic moment. One of the heels slipped slightly on the polished floor. I teetered dangerously, reaching out instinctively, and Emma's hands grabbed mine. The mirror reflected the scene. 3 people, 1 secret, a delicate balance about to collapse. My transformation, both physical and emotional, was now fully exposed, and the thrill I had felt alone in the apartment was now amplified, dangerous, and utterly consuming. Mark's gaze lingered on me, and I realized with a jolt that the illusion of control had vanished. I was trapped in more ways than one, trapped by heels, by clothes, by my own secret desires, and by the suspenseful unfolding of this unexpected encounter. "Careful," Emma whispered again, her tone soft but firm. I nodded, unable to speak. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me fully transformed, every inch a symbol of vulnerability, temptation, and exhilaration. The heels clicked, the skirt swayed, the wig framed my face. And yet, the danger wasn't in the clothing. It was in the knowledge that one wrong move, one startled gasp, one slip of the heel, and everything would shatter. The doorbell rang again. Emma's sister, arriving earlier than expected. My pulse soared. The apartment was a powder keg of suspense, and I was the match. Emma glanced at me, eyes gleaming with challenge and reassurance. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, gripping the edge of the dresser for balance. Ready, or as ready as anyone could be, to face the chaos that my curiosity had unleashed. The next moments would decide everything: my secret, my identity, and the fine line between thrill and disaster. The apartment felt impossibly small, every creak of the floor echoing like a warning. Emma's sister had arrived, her presence just beyond the door, her knock sharp and impatient. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to betray me with every beat. I teetered slightly on the heels, clutching the edge of the dresser for stability. One wrong move, one slip, and everything would collapse. The carefully constructed world I had hidden behind my secret crossdressing, the persona I had crafted for Emma, and the fragile sense of control I had clung to. Emma's eyes met mine, a mixture of reassurance and mischief. "Stay still," she whispered, fingers brushing mine lightly, sending an electric shiver down my spine. She turned to the door, opening it just enough to greet her sister. I could hear the muffled conversation, snippets of laughter and questions, but every word seemed to stretch on endlessly, drawing out the suspense until it felt unbearable. I glanced at the mirror again. My reflection stared back at me. Alex, yes, but also the girl I had become in these stolen moments. The stockings, the skirt, the blouse, the wig, all of it transformed me. But the reflection also mirrored my fear, the raw, unfiltered panic of being exposed. I swallowed hard, wishing I could vanish, wishing I could melt into the floorboards, but the stilettos kept me elevated, visible, trapped. Emma's sister stepped closer, and my pulse quickened. She didn't seem to notice at first, distracted by something in her bag, but then her gaze drifted and landed squarely on me. My stomach dropped. She blinked, a slow, deliberate movement that made my heart seize. Recognition? Confusion? Shock? I couldn't tell. Emma's hand squeezed mine again, grounding me. Relax, she whispered. Not yet. But her voice, calm as it was, did little to soothe the storm raging inside me. Every instinct screamed to flee, to rip off the wig, kick off the heels, and revert to Alex. But the thrill, the forbidden excitement, rooted me in place. The apartment seemed to shrink with every passing second. The heels clicked faintly as I adjusted my weight, each sound amplified by my racing heartbeat. The mirror reflected every detail, the tilt of my head, the tremor in my fingers, the slight flush across my cheeks. I looked like someone else entirely, someone daring, delicate, and exposed. And I realized with a jolt that there was no going back, not yet, maybe not ever. Emma's sister moved closer to the couch, still unaware, or pretending to be, of the storm in the room. I could hear snippets of her voice, laughter, casual remarks. But my ears were attuned to every sound, the subtle rustle of her bag, the faint squeak of her shoes against the floor, the steady, grounding presence of Emma's hand on mine. Then, the moment of absolute suspense, a faint creak behind me. I froze, stiff as a statue, and turned slowly toward the sound. Nothing, but the hairs on my neck stood on end. My reflection in the mirror seemed almost to mock me, so perfectly composed, so dangerously alive. One misstep, one misjudged movement, and it would all come crashing down. Emma's gaze met mine again, her eyes sparkling with that dangerous mix of playfulness and control. Almost time, she whispered. And just like that, the tension escalated, wrapping around me like a vice. I was caught between desire and fear, thrill and panic, exposure and secrecy. Every instinct screamed to move, to change, to hide, but I couldn't. The doorbell rang again. My heart lurched violently. Another visitor? Or worse, a neighbor, a delivery, someone unexpected? Emma's sister glanced toward the sound, puzzled. I teetered slightly on the heels, clutching at the dresser, breath shallow. The mirror reflected the full extent of my transformation, my vulnerability laid bare. Emma's eyes locked on mine, and in that moment, I understood the truth. I was completely, utterly trapped. Not just physically in the stilettos, not just emotionally in this persona, but suspended in a suspenseful moment that could break, or transform me forever. And then the knock came. Louder this time. Insistent. Someone on the other side of the door demanding entry. Emma's sister froze. Emma's fingers tightened around mine. I swallowed hard, the taste of fear sharp on my tongue. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and trembling, every inch a symbol of the dual life I had embraced. I didn't know what would happen next. Would they see me? Would I be exposed? Or would this suspenseful moment stretch on, teasing, testing, threatening to shatter everything I thought I knew about myself? The camera of my life seemed to pause in that heartbeat of uncertainty. And I realized there was no escape. Not yet. I was caught between two worlds, elevated on stilettos, trapped in silk and lace, my secret laid bare to forces beyond my control. I took a deep, shaky breath and whispered to myself, whatever happens, I have to stay in control. The knock came again, louder, closer, and the screen fades to black.